these are your people. Kindly speak to us. Thank you.
All right. Good evening once again, everyone.
Good evening.
I want to thank the leadership and then the entire membership of this group, that's the Upper Room Zion Church, for such an opportunity to share the little that I know in medicine, also with the people on this platform. I would like to share a few slides. So I think if I'm made the host, I can share. I'll be able to share the PowerPoint. All right, thank you very much. And so this evening we will be talking on cardiovascular accident, which is popularly known as stroke. Yes, please, can you see my screen?
Yes, please, Doc.
Please, I'm asking that. Can you see my screen?
Yes, please, Doc. We can see.
Okay, all right. So thank you very much for this opportunity. One thing that I normally tell people is that when it comes to some of these things, when it comes to health, it is always important to seek for the knowledge on health from the right sources. Because I have noticed that in this part of the world, a lot of people are doing all kinds of things, combining all kinds of concoctions, combining all kinds of drugs and medications so that they can feel better. And they are just doing it from what they've heard or what they know, from what maybe even a friend who might not even be a medical person would have told them. And so when it comes to such events like this, I'll always encourage people to take it serious. And then after that, I'll also be very happy to see more people asking more questions, because the more we ask questions and we try to address the questions, it helps us to learn a lot and also bring out certain things that probably we might not have been able to capture in the presentation. And so I want to thank everybody once again. And so this evening we are speaking on cerebrovascular accident or stroke. That's what you call stroke. And so when we just see from even the word cerebral and vascular, cerebral simply means brain. Vascular means blood vessel. And so it simply means that cerebrovascular accident in layman's term will just mean that a disease of the brain that is caused by a problem with a blood vessel. So simply put, a disease of the brain that is caused by a problem with the blood vessels of the brain. And so just with any other organ in the body, be it the heart, be it the kidneys, be it the lungs, every organ or every part of the body has blood flowing to that part. And the blood that flows to that part of the body, so the blood, that part of the body or the various body organs receive nutrients from the blood flowing to that part. And then the blood is also able to carry waste substances from those organs so that the body will find a way to get them out of the body. Same applies to the brain. But then the brain is a very crucial organ or structure in our body. And so the moment there is reduced blood supply to our brain, then you will term it as that there is a cerebrovascular accident or stroke. So I want us to move to our next line. So briefly, I will tackle on just introduction to stroke, classification of stroke, a bit of pathophysiology of how some of the strokes come about, and then we will also look at certain risk factors, certain things that increases our chance of getting stroke. And then we will look at clinical presentation or what people generally call signs and symptoms. And then we also look at some management or some preventive measures that we can take. And so in 2009, the American Heart Association and then the American Stroke Association, they brought out this definition. And so I only want us to memorize this definition, but I want us to really understand certain concepts. And so initially, the definition of stroke was limited to time. And so previously, stroke was being defined as whenever there is impaired blood supply to the brain for more than 24 hours, and that can happen for more than 24 hours. But then now, that particular definition has been changed. And now, with that definition, there is no time limit. As long as we can prove it with imaging or something like, let's say, a CT scan or an MRI of the brain, whether it has happened for 1 minute, 2 seconds, or irrespective of the time, as long as we are able to show it on a CT scan that, oh, there is a damage of a blood vessel in a particular part of the brain, we can classify that there's stroke. And usually when that happens, we are going to have certain changes occurring in the brain that will produce certain symptoms for us to see. And so the basic definition of stroke, like I want us to just make it simple. Whenever the blood supply to the brain is impaired, stroke will happen. Whenever there is blood supply to the brain is impaired or is hampered. I don't know the kind of English you want to use, but whenever the blood flow to the brain is impaired, then you have stroke. Some scientists even call term stroke as brain attack. The same way we have something like heart attack. The concept is the same. So, for instance, though we are not talking about heart attack, I just want to just make that like try to make the analogy so that we understand. When we say just heart attack, it means that the blood supply to the heart is impaired, and so some of the cells in the heart will start dying. The same way applies to stroke. Whenever blood that is supposed to go to the brain is not getting to a particular part of the brain, that part of the brain, the cells there will start dying. And as the cells begin to die, that is what is going to cause all the symptoms or the signs that you see in stroke patients. So let's get this clear. And so let's briefly look at the brain. I know, I mean, even for us medics, there are still people who have difficulties understanding the brain, but this is just a simple pictorial view for us to understand. So when we look at the brain has several parts. And so one of the parts that is called the cerebrum. And even the cerebrum is divided into different sections or what we call lobes. And so, like from your forehead going, you have what we call the frontal lobe. I will try and use external parts of the body on like external structures on the head so that you get the picture clear. So the frontal lobe, that's from your forehead area, or that's the part clear the red. That part controls is for memory, for thinking, for behavior, and then for initiation of movement. We also have a part called the temporal lobe. So around where your ears are, that area, that part also controls hearing. We also have a part, so above the ear, we have what we call the parietal lobe. That also controls language and touch. And then we have the occipital lobe. What you call it vertical in P, vertical, your occipital lobe. That part is for sight. And so, even from this simple thing that we explained, if somebody should have an injury to the back of the head, it can affect your sight because the part of the brain and at the back of the head, that's the occipital lobe, is responsible for your sight. And then we also have another structure. It's called the cerebellum. It's right below the occipital lobe, or that's the back of the head. That part controls balance and coordination. And so when we say balance, you see when you are walking, both legs are in play, and also your hands, your both hands are also in play. For you to walk straight without falling down, without falling sideways or falling backwards, all that is controlled by your cerebellum. There are other structures that are not captured in this diagram. We really have centers of the brain that controls your breathing. And so if there is a damage or if blood supply to that part of the brain is affected, then the function that part of the brain helps you to perform, you will not be able to perform. And so if, for instance, someone should have a damage or blood not being able to reach the green area, that's the occipital lobe, it means that that particular person might have problem with vision because the cells that control sight, because they are not getting blood supply, they will start dying. And then one thing that we need to also understand that usually for the brain, if The brain, any part of the brain does not get blood supply for between 4 to 6 minutes. Different books quote different figures, but I'm giving a range. Usually between 4 to 6 minutes. If the brain doesn't get blood between 4 to 6 minutes, that part of the brain will start dying. Please, I hope you are following. Yeah,
Yes,
hello.
please. Yes,
Yes.
please.
So that's what I briefly said. So we have the red part, that's the frontal lobe. We have the blue part, that's the parietal lobe. We have the yellow part, that's for hearing and learning and feelings. That's the yellow part. And then the green part, that's the occipital lobe. And then we also have a part called the brainstem. So the brainstem controls breathing, your heart rate, temperature, etc. And so if there is a damage because blood supply to any of these areas is impaired, then the function that part of the brain perform, you will not be able to perform that function. And so, as doctors or even as, let's say, healthcare professionals, sometimes some of the symptoms that the patient is presenting with can give us an idea the part of the brain that could be affected in the event of a stroke. All right. And so, as for this picture, I will not even bother because people get more confused. So, this is just a picture that is showing the blood supply to the brain. I will not even touch on it because people get more confused. So, I wanted to stay with the basic things. All right. So, I want us to look at the types of stroke. Though there are different subtypes of stroke, but in the broad categories, broadly, stroke is categorized into these two main groups. So the first one that is called the ischemic or the infarctive stroke. That type is the most commonest type that we have in the world. Most people who have stroke, most of the time they have the ischemic or the infarctive one. When we say ischemia or infarctive, it only means that cells are dying because they are not getting blood being supplied to them. That's just the meaning. So when you hear ischemia or infarctive or in any way, just understand that it only means that cells are dying because they are not getting blood supply. And then the second type, major type, is the hemorrhagic stroke. With the hemorrhagic stroke, when we say hemorrhage in medical term, it means bleeding. So it means that with a hemorrhagic stroke, the person will bleed into the brain. So some of the blood vessels can rupture. And then the person will bleed into the brain. But that one is not common because with the hemorrhagic stroke, most of the time when it happens, the person is fatal, the person will die. And within some few hours, the person will die. Surviving that type of stroke is very low. But then with the first one, which is the ischemic or the infarctive stroke, that is the common one. And for that one, people even survive for years before they die. So I think we've talked about that. So I'll just show a picture to explain that. So with the ischemic stroke, as I was saying, usually with that one, what is happening is that you could have a clot forming in the blood vessel. So let's look at the first picture, the thrombosis one. The first picture, you could see that there's a yellowish substance in the blood vessel. So it's blocking the blood supply. So you could have clots that are forming in your blood vessels. Whenever the clot is not moving, it is called a thrombus or the thrombosis. The moment the clot breaks away and starts traveling through the blood vessels, then it becomes an embolus, or we will say there's embolism. So let me take it again. So you could have clot forming in the blood, and when clots form, they can go and block the blood supply, the blood vessels. And when the blood vessels are blocked, blood cannot flow through to whichever part of the body is supposed to flow through. And let's look at some of the things that can make blood clot form. And so there are certain diseases that can cause clots to form. Whenever disease that causes damage to your blood vessels. So for instance, a common example is hypertension. If somebody has high blood pressure over time, because the heart is pumping blood under high pressure through the blood vessels, over time, there will be damage to the walls of the blood vessels because the blood is flowing through under high pressure. So over time, because of that pressure with which the blood is flowing, with time, some of the blood, with the walls of the blood vessels will be damaged. And when there is that damage, the response of the body in trying to repair the blood vessels will lead to blood formation inside the blood vessels. And this can go and block. So if, let's say, you have this blood clot can start from anywhere of the body. It can even start like move from the leg all the way to the brain. It can move from any part of the body all the way to the brain. And when you go and block the blood vessels that supply any part of the brain, that part of the brain will start dying and then you have stroke. So let us look at some of the other things, conditions that can cause it. So we have other conditions, even like sickle cell. People with sickle cell disease, they have a chance of developing stroke. People with sickle cell disease, and then people with high cholesterol level. And so if you have high cholesterol level, with time, some of the fats in your blood, they can actually aggregate, like they can actually form together and actually form like a plug and block the blood vessels. And so some of all these things can lead to this situation that I'm explaining. So even if you don't even remember the thing, just get the concept that sometimes clots can form inside the blood vessels. And when these clots form, they can block blood from reaching. When these clots actually find themselves in the blood vessels of the brain, it will make the brain cells die, and that will also lead to stroke. And then the other type that I said is not so common is the hemorrhagic. So that one, let's really look at the structure here. You realize that at some point, the blood vessel is ballooning out, like forming something like a loop, a balloon, because it is like stretching. And when it stretches at some point, now the blood vessel will rupture and then the person will actually bleed. So if this actually happens in the brain, the person is going to bleed to the brain. And with those ones, when it even starts, the person will even complain of having a severe form of headache that they have never had in their lifetime. And before they realize, they'll be unconscious. So they'll only be rushed to the hospital unconscious. And when maybe the CT scan or MRI is done, that is when they will be able to find out that they are actually bleeding to the brain. And the problem too is that because in this part of the world, we don't have enough doctors, enough specialists, brain specialists, when some of these issues happen, survival rate is low. The chances that the person will survive is very, very low. Is very, very low, especially in our part of the world. So now we want to look at some risk factors. When we say risk factors, it only means that things or certain factors that increase your chances of developing stroke. So broadly, we group them into two. We have non-modifiable factors and then modifiable factors. So when we say non-modifiable factors, they are actually factors that things you can't really do much to, you can't really do much about them. Like you can't really influence them. So something like age. So for instance, we have age. With age, there are things you can't really do much about them. So for instance, age. When we talk of age, increasing age, so usually above age 65, your chance of developing stroke becomes high. The second one, another non-modifiable, is sex or gender. Let me so to say gender. And so from research and even from general knowledge, we realize that stroke is more common in women than in men. The reason is that women tend to live longer than men. Women tend to live longer than men. And so the longer you live, the longer your chance of developing stroke. And because women tend to live longer than men, stroke have tend to occur more in women than in men. The next one is family history. So there are some families that stroke is actually common. And so I want to use this opportunity to encourage us that let us try as much as possible to ask about our family. Let us have an idea of certain medical conditions that is common in our families so that you will start taking measures to protect ourselves. There are some families, maybe diabetes is common, hypertension is common. If you are aware of all these things, it will influence how you live your life and do certain things. And then we also have previous history of a vascular event. And so there are people who might have actually had an episode of a problem with the blood supply to the brain. Maybe they didn't even develop stroke, but it was something else. If you've ever had a problem or an issue with the blood supply or even any blood vessels in the brain before, then it can also put you at risk of eventually developing stroke. And then you also have genetics. So genetics to stroke have tend to be affected by race, especially for people of African descent and African Americans to stroke tend to be common. Though it also happens in the whites, but looking at the numbers, it tend to happen more in blacks too. Sometimes some of these things can also be influenced by our social culture, how we live our life, the kind of food we eat, and all that. And then let's come to the modifiable factors. And so with the modifiable factors, the first on the list is hypertension. And I want to say it categorically that I want to state categorically that hypertension is the number one risk factor for stroke. Is the number one. If there are 100 people with stroke, you get about 80 to 90% of them with a history of hypertension. Either the hypertension, as in their blood pressure is high, either they were not aware that they have hypertension, or they knew about it, but then they didn't take medications, or they were on medications, but at some point they stopped taking the medication. And so let us beware. If you are even on this platform, you are listening to me, and you've been diagnosed of hypertension, and you feel that you are tired of your medication, I want to use this opportunity to encourage you that don't give up on your medications. Because if you avoid the medication, taking the drugs for a very long time, it will put you at risk of developing stroke at some point in your life. The next one is smoking. And so smoking to some of the chemicals in tobacco or cigarettes also causes damage to our blood vessels. So we have nicotine. Nicotine can cause damage to our blood vessels. When you're exposed to nicotine for a long time, it can cause certain changes or damage to your blood vessel, which increases your chance of getting stroke. Next one is diabetes. Diabetes too also causes damage to our blood vessels over a long period of time. With all the diseases that I'm mentioning, the damage doesn't happen in a day. It takes years for some of these things to happen. We also have obesity. And so people who are obese also increase their chances of developing stroke. We also have high blood cholesterol, as I said. So when you have the fat level in your blood being so high, it also puts you at risk, because when the cholesterol level in your blood is high, it increases the chances that clots can form in your blood vessels and block the blood supply to your brain. We also have some cardiac disease or some heart disease. There's a heart condition called atrial fibrillation. So whenever somebody has atrial fibrillation, what happens is that the heart begins to beat abnormally. So when I say the heart is beating abnormally, either the heart is beating too fast or the heart is beating too slowly. So the rhythm, the heart now that does not follow a particular certain rhythm. The way you expect the heart to beat at a certain pace, it does not no longer beat that way. And when that thing happens to it increases your chance of developing stroke. And then we also have misuse or substance abuse. For people who take in alcohol, people who take in amphetamines, people who take in cocaine, it also increases the chance of developing stroke. Alcohol, especially to excessive day of alcohol, can also cause damage to your blood vessels, which can also affect the blood vessels of your brain. Amphetamines and cocaines also have effect on your heart. Amphetamines, they also cause stimulants. They can cause your heart to work abnormally very fast, and with time, that can also increase your chances of developing stroke. And so these are some common signs and symptoms of stroke. There's this acronym so that people can remember. It's called Be Fast. Be Fast. And so the B stands for balance loss. So people who have stroke, they will lose their balance. Like let me issue this disclaimer. These clinical signs or symptoms or signs I'm mentioning, you will not find all of them in one person with stroke. You can find somebody with all of them. You can find someone with two or three of them. And these are common signs and symptoms that you might find in people with stroke. So they could lose balance. And so losing balance, some of them, when they are even walking, they might even fall down. Or even they are walking, they even have walking difficulties. The E is eyesight changes. And so if the stroke is occurring, especially at the occipital region, as I said, like at the back of the head, the damage is occurring at the back of the head. That part controls vision, and so that with that one, there's going to be a problem with vision. The F stands for face drooping. So when we say the face drooping, you realize that for some people, their lip, their mouth will shift to one side. That also happens, and this is due to damage to some of the nerves that come. There are some nerves that actually comes out from the brain. They are known as cranial nerves, and so a common one of them that can get damaged in an event of a stroke is what we call a facial nerve. That's facial nerve 7. So when this particular facial nerve gets damaged, then it means that the person's mouth will shift to one side. You also have arm weakness. So you can have people coming in with arm weakness, and then the way the arm was, the power in the arms will go down. So for some people, depending on the extent of the damage or the severity of the stroke, some people will not be able to even move the arm. For some people, the hand will just be by their side. They can't even move the arm again. The S is speech difficulty. And so depending on the part of the brain affected, speech can also become a problem. So some people realize that now they will slur, or when they are speaking, they can't even talk properly. They cannot even pronounce words properly. When they are even speaking, you have to even pay particular attention before you be able to hear them. And then T is time. And it means that stroke is actually an emergency. So whenever you suspect that somebody is having stroke, you need to act very fast. Unfortunately, in this part of the world, response to medical emergencies is very poor because one, we don't have access to enough ambulances, and number two, access to healthcare too is still a challenge. There are still places or some districts in Ghana that even have difficulties whenever somebody is even sick. Getting them even transported from wherever they are to the hospital is a problem. Some places they might not even have access to a facility even in their area. They will have to travel several kilometers before they'll be able to go to hospital. So, because as an emergency, we need to act fast by quickly getting the person to the hospital so that the necessary treatment can begin. Because the more you delay, the more the harm goes on and the more severe the condition becomes. And so let us look at the management. So for somebody who has stroke, I wouldn't go into details of them, but I'll just mention a few things here. For somebody who has stroke, there's, there's a multidisciplinary approach. And so the first of all, the person will need medical management. That is number one. Number two, the nurse or DNS will also have a role to play in management of that patient. And last of it all, physiotherapy. The last aspect is what sometimes I find it lacking in the management of stroke patients, especially for people who might have been having their face dropping, where we have their mouth shifted to one side, or they can't even walk well, or one of the arm or both arms they can't even function properly. Those people would need to start physiotherapy as early as possible, because for somebody with stroke who cannot walk properly, the more you delay the physiotherapy session, the worse it becomes, especially with the movement or with movement of their arms, or even with people who have their mouth shifted to one side. And so physiotherapy is a critical part of stroke management. Let's just take note. All these medical management, nursing management, physiotherapy is very, very important. And so now I want us to look at a few things. That's just at this my last slide. I want us to look at a few things we can do to prevent stroke. So the first one is to control our blood pressure. If you are here on this platform and you've been diagnosed of hypertension, that is not a death sentence. There's so much you can do. You need to regularly take your drugs and ensure that you check your BP frequently so that at least any changes can be detected and the necessary steps can be taken. If you're also here and you don't have an issue with your blood pressure, I will encourage you to frequently check your blood pressure, especially for people who are aging. Even if you're not aging, once in a while you need to check it so that when it's going up, we can quickly do something about it. And then we also have lifestyle modifications. And so, especially for people who are diagnosed of hypertension, it is necessary that they reduce their salt intake. People also have to check their intake of fats. And then reduction of alcohol consumption. And so for people who are taking too much of alcohol, it puts them at risk of developing stroke after some time. And so they need to either stop at all or reduce the alcohol intake. And then we also have exercises. So you can do exercises. It can take different forms, and you need to do exercises that you can endure. We all have our various strengths and capacities. Try and find out and do certain exercises that you are capable of doing. And then the last of it all is stress reduction. This is so one thing that is leading to people developing hypertension. People are going through all kinds of stress, be it emotional stress from marital issues, family issues, stress at workplace, stress in taking care of your kids, and all that, financial difficulty, financial stress. Stress also increases your chance of developing hypertension, which can also put you at risk of developing stroke. And so we need to check all these things, and I believe that it's going to help. So let's be mindful, especially with the attention on with hypertension. If you have hypertension here, I encourage you follow through with your medications, and then follow all the advice that your doctors have given you. And I strongly believe that it can help a lot. Alcohol intake too has to be taken notice of, and then fats. Let us be mindful of our diet very well, and I think that's going to help. So at this point, I'll bring everything to an end, and then I'll ask that maybe the moderator, if people have questions, they can ask. Thank you very much for your audience.
Thank you very much, Doc. Anytime I meet you, I'm so much educated. God bless you so much for impacting lives this evening. I was informed if I'm a question be or it to me Ebisa. If there is any question, you can please ask. Doc, Pacho, me one question. Okay, Mr. Obed Bonso. So what question I'm Pacho Bisa? I was on mute to mic.
Right from the beginning, I lost some of the things, but it was on the risk factors. the risk factors. And the first one, is it modified what? Or was some factors be or less be? And I saw sex. Is it about the act sex or about gender? I want a little clarification on that. I came in late. So.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Obed Bonsu. I don't know, me shame we na me can me refer to gender.
Okay.
Na me explain say generally no, the more who you know, not the chances of between your stroke no air control. And Miss Hatchie will say generally no, Yama and ma any chair generally. Ain't no. A man in general, no, they are not more chances of getting stroke only higher than a man because say man what higher tendencies to grow older, mostly live longer than the men in generally. I can refer to gender. All right, thank you.
Okay. So my name is okay kakra. Okay. Doc, another question. If I show, are there hypertension in Rono? Mate say, for your lifetime. Time be anywhere when Makase with the major manoma. Why is it a lifetime drug as a someone if that's it?
All right. And so
okay, let me add 2 questions. I can't now answer mama. I believe so. Answer you will be questions class. So okay, family in Pamucho, question on hypertension, question on stroke. Okay. Okay, Doc, Pacho answer my.
But with the hypertension, no, with endurance of a fan for a lifetime, no. Yeah, sometimes no. For some of the conditions, no, as it stands now, no. Medical science, as I'll put it, no, medical science, IEB. But still now, no, medical science is not a perfect science. And sometimes, no, because of the way damage, the whole thing of hypertension is coming with, no, it becomes difficult reversing those damages. And you know, in donor, you do better so say you be controlling your BP, no. One thing I hear is say damage now, of course, no. We want to prevent further damage or other complications from coming in. That is the first aspect of the way. Secondly, no, the natural controls are controlling everybody, controlling the BP, no, they have failed. Once the natural controls of your blood pressure fails, no, you need to depend on external factors or external forces, which is the drug. Until now, no, can naturally the body debates me. Now the body can no longer do that, and so that's when you need the drug. And so the drug is helping the body to now be able to control your blood pressure and to prevent further complications from happening, which might possibly shorten your lifespan on earth. So we want to just ensure that there's a good control of the blood pressure with the drug, with the help of the drug, and 2, to prevent further complications from occurring.
Okay.
In some way, natural controls, control BP, because the body, there are checks and balances in your body. So whenever there are disturbance of those checks and balances, there are some conditions. Sometimes when you take the drug, it can reset those controls, and you don't even need to take those drugs again. But there are other conditions and so on. When those controls fail, you have to depend on the drug for your lifetime. And another thing is necessary with the grown. One good thing is I'm saying people say, even if say hypertension might be to a dose swap, you need to be going for regular review Because sometimes no, they are obit young for some time. No. Now people no abnormal. People never normal. Doctors need to me fear doing so for some time. We got what we call drug holiday. The amount of drug holiday now, near monitor. Some people know we are fortunate. Obi or compare, you fear doing for some time. People no be normal and cause you. And for such people, no, the doctors can advise them that not to take the drug. There are also other people who are not take care doing that after some time. No, people need to make conform minus conform so I had it. That thought was no. The doctors will advise them to okay, I don't know, either they will reduce the dosage or they will tell them to stop taking the drug. And even in all these things, no, we should still seek the opinion of our doctors or nurses or healthcare providers. Even if person what they do, you cannot person will reduce because it's not so person seek advice from your healthcare provider. Right.
Oh, thank you. I have two other questions from you. So, family, over to me, send a question to me either via WhatsApp or you just click on management and ask your question. The first question is, why is it that women grows? Why is it that women age okay? Oh, okay. I remember. Okay, the question is maybe how it was written. No, I remember you made a comment that a man change a mema. So this question wants to ask, what is the science behind it, and what can men also do to grow and the second question is, does sex have impact on cardiovascular disease? Okay, and this one also is asking that sex, as in not gender, but having sex, having a love affair with someone, does it have a positive or negative impact? Can it cause stroke whatsoever? Okay. Doc, can you please do justice to these two for
All
us?
right. So thank you very much. So with the MMA lifespan bit, you know, for now, most of the data no has got to do with our socio-cultural settings. And for instance, men tend to be involved in high-risk jobs. That is number one. Number two, looking at our social setting, no, the man will have to provide for the family in most cases. Even aside their nuclear family, no, for communities that believe in extended family system, the same person is still taking care of other cousins or other nephews or other nieces or even other people in the extended family. And this puts them at a whole lot of other medical risks. So number one, the same one man being involved in high risk job, maybe the person is maybe an engineer or even working with ECG or doing other high risk jobs. The person is amazing. They'll go and climb a building, they are building, they can fall. Two, the burden, certain burden on men to also put them, makes most of them develop certain conditions that they can also die early because of the social settings. And so that social setting also has an impact on their health. And one thing also is stress, because there are socio-cultural setting. The man is supposed to take care of the family, the wife and then the kids, plus other extended family members. And so all some of these things could also be contributing factors. And then another thing is that men also are I'm speaking in general terms.
Okay.
Generally, too, men are also exposed to certain lifestyle. When you look on records, men tend to smoke more than women. Men tend to take in more alcohol than women.
Okay.
And so all these things in the end put men at risk of a lot of things, a lot of medical conditions. So most men tend to die younger or before the women. And so this is just all this I'm saying is from statistics. But the point is that even if you are a man and you are listening to me on this platform, you can make conscious effort to avoid certain things like alcohol and all these things, smoking, and also be very intentional about your health. Even the times you eat and all that, you need to be very intentional about your health. I believe in God. I believe that God will protect me and everything. But at the same time, you need to be very intentional about your health.
Okay.
And then secondly, sex has its own health benefits for the body. At the same time, the whole event of sex is a lot of work, especially for the heart. And so there are certain people with certain heart conditions that their doctors will advise them to even reduce the number of times they have sex. And so if you have certain heart conditions, so let me say there's a heart condition called myocardial infarction or heart attack. If you are somebody who has had a heart attack before, it means that such a person already, the heart is becoming weak, more weaker. And so for such a person, if that person involved in a lot of sexual activities, already the heart is having issues. The heart is becoming weak. And you're also having more sex, which involves more activity, more action of the heart. You rather let the heart break down eventually. And also, there are certain people too that tend to use. No, it's not part of the question. I'm trying to just bring in that perspective. There are also people, some men, that also uses these aphrodisiacs and all that. Especially if you are young and you are using those things, is not so good. It has its own issues. If you are a bit aged and you are using those things based on the dose, it's fine. So, if you don't have any heart condition, then you can still have your sex. But if you have certain heart conditions like what I mentioned, myocardial infarction or heart attack, you had a heart attack before, or you are even having heart failure, you've been diagnosed of having heart failure, then with those conditions, your doctor might advise you to reduce the number of times you have sex. Else, for a heart that is already fading, if you give that heart more work, the heart will even become, at some point, to stop working, and the person will definitely die. And so, if the person has a heart condition already, then you will advise them to be mindful of excessive sexual activities.
Okay.
If you don't have any heart condition, if your heart is fine, your heart doesn't have any issues, then generally for such people, there wouldn't be anything preventing them from having enough sexual activities.
Okay. Hello, Doc, you're muted. Hello? Doc, yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. I have two questions here.
Okay.
My name is last for the day, but you can still keep your questions coming. The first one is saying that my mother stopped taking her hypertension drugs, and she is feeling better than when she used to take it. Obi say ne maame ebra na offer hypertension aduro no na ne ho nye ba ene ya nansen ya ugya the mother is saying that she is feeling better. What is the risk? The second question is, what food should we eat to prevent stroke? Okay, it's a quite we so say aduane ben, what should our diet be? Said aduane ben ye di a eboa ye na koma na ema stroke enya yen. Okay, so these are the two I have, I believe will be the last for tonight. So first of all, stopping the drugs, and secondly, food already.
Let me explain. nipa no stop a drug, for me, one and our advice, they say the mom should still be keeping an eye on the BP and be checking the BP regularly and still have to be going for the reviews because me person me chair adidimu kakra.
Okay.
Say obi arena oba hospital. Mami say in the case of high blood pressure, patient be a hospital or high blood pressure. Number one, you may take any medical history, you may be for more. They will say depend a number of questions. Even though a teacher and say also BP or high, no, we will need to understand and have an insight into the problem that what could be causing the high blood pressure. For instance, obi on my API, the high blood pressure is because the cholesterol level is high. And for such a person, no, if they are able to regulate or do something about their cholesterol level, the BP will also go down.
Okay.
Together with the drugs. And I explained here for some people, no, they could still be off the drug and their BP will still come back to normal, especially for people who don't have other risk factors. There are even people who but they still develop hypertension. But then for people who are more other risk factors, they need to be extra careful. And, in the case of her mom, his or her mom, I was still advised that the mother should still be keeping an eye on her BP and ensure there are no other risk factors, especially with something like cholesterol level in particular. Because for most women, after childbirth or even after menopause, most women tend to accumulate fat in their body after menopause. And so if the mom is a bit old and has passed the age of menopause and she's no longer taking the drug, they have to keep an eye on it, still be checking the BP and still be going for the review. At the same time, they should keep an eye on certain risk factors to be sure that the mom is not having any of those risk factors. And yes, things might take them on away. And another thing is I'm the council with respect to BP is sometimes people want to feel something in their body before they know that they are not well. No. For most people with hypertension, you might not even show any symptoms. One thing that sometimes will even take out people's mind is that sometimes you have this headache, but for painkiller is not going. One of painkiller, the headache is still not going. And in such a case, it could be an issue with that your blood pressure is high. So I had someone that some months ago called me that the person was having headaches. The person told me that he has taken Panadol, but still the headache is still not going. So I just would have that kindly go and check your blood pressure. When the person went to check the blood pressure was over 200. The systolic was over 200. And in this case, I was like, so I had to let the person go to the hospital for them to put him on medications. And then the headache vanished, even without taking anything like it. And so with the case of his mom, I also encourage them to keep an eye on the BP and still be doing follow-up and doing constant checkups to be sure that there are no other risk factors that can increase the chance of developing stroke. And so even if it's not from the BP, as we said, there are other risk factors like high cholesterol level. So the BP might be okay, but then if the cholesterol level is high, she can still be at the risk of developing stroke. And then with the second part, with the diet, sometimes it's a bit difficult because we always, one of the key principles I always tell people about when it comes to these diets and lifestyles, about being moderate in whatever we do, because the body needs the various nutrients for our system to function very well. And so you cannot say that, oh, you don't eat oil again, or you won't take fatty food again. But the key word here is that we should take things moderately, whether it's salt, whatever. It shouldn't be too much, it shouldn't be excess. Even proteins that we need to take in a lot. Too much proteins too, if we take certain type of protein too much, it can also lead to certain conditions. And so the key word here is that be it proteins, be it carbohydrates, be it fats, be it vitamins, minerals, etc., things should be done moderately. So, I mean, you balance carbohydrate with proteins, kakra, fat kakra, and all that, and all those things will help the body. So that is the key thing I will say, because, and another thing is that because of people's different financial situations, sometimes you might even recommend certain foods, but then maybe that people might not be able to afford it to financial constraint or due to accessibility. Because maybe some people, due to where they are or the part of the country where they are living, they might not have access to certain foods. And so the broad principle is, let's be moderate in whatever meals we are taking. Let's try to eat balanced diet. So you see, some people they are always eating carbohydrates, only carbohydrates. No, there should be a balance. So if let's say the banku with soup and then some little meat or fish, it's fine. You try to balance. If it's, let's say, yam with contourne stew, or yam with tomato stew, or with egg or something, it's fine. If it's plantain with contourne, with oil, with palm oil, it's fine. Like the things should be balanced. And I also encourage us to be eating fruits and then vegetables. It helps a lot. It really helps a lot. And so on the lighter side, even a fruit like banana, people who are even having issues with constipation, if you take in banana frequently, and you also take in more water, it gives you very good bowel movement, and you wouldn't be having a lot of constipation. Rather than sticking with, let's say, purgatives to help you empty your bowel or be able to go to like empty your bowels frequently, once you are taking in good foods like certain foods like banana, and you are taking in adequate water, you have your bowel will empty very well, and you wouldn't have issues with constipation most of the time. And so that is what I would say to that. And so I'll finally want to say that we need to stay alive, we need to stay healthy, so that we'll be able to live a very fulfilled life and also make impact in a lot of lives, because we are not only living for ourselves, we are living to also touch other people, to become a source of blessing to other people. Even as Christians, God is interested in our health. God wants us to live long, and we have a part to play. And so let's do our best. Let's be very intentional about health. Let's be intentional about what we eat. Let's be intentional about what we take inside. And I strongly believe that God will also do his part by protecting us and giving us long life. Thank you so much for your time and for your audience. I'm most grateful for this opportunity again. I want to thank the leadership of this house. God richly bless us all.
Doc, God bless you. Yeah, that's it. I like how you ended it, that we need to be impacting lives, we need to be touching lives, just like you've impacted lives tonight. We are so grateful. On behalf of the family, the Nyankopon Inshira wo the Hawa Wasi Achreche and Nyomemu Achreyen. I have some questions here which you do Ubeka page temporarily, so that maybe you could answer them for us over there. We are sincerely grateful, and I believe we cannot pay you enough for all the things you've been doing for us. God bless you so much. Family, this is the end of the program tonight. Our greetings has been always the same. When I greet couples for life, the response is When I greet Live and Cleave, the response is Couples for Life, Christ our help. Can we please unmute our microphones? Then we take our slogans, then we end the program. Pacha Yabompaye. There was Ostro, any assassin for you've been with us, you've blessed our marriages, and you are always shaping our marriages through this post-marital counseling. We bless you. Please bless the speaker for tonight for us. Please bless every family member here. We plead that our marriages will be a model one so that people will watch us give blessings to your name and even emulate the good things we do in our marriages. Protect our marriages from every wall of the enemy. Protect our marriages from all intrusion of the devil. Protect our children. Protect our descendants, our in-laws, and everyone in our enclave. Mark our doorposts with your blood even as we sleep, and bless us with all blessings. Thank you, Father, for blessing us tonight. We commit the speaker into your hands. We pray that everything he has lost will be replenished. We bless your name in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Can we unmute our microphones? I was for able to unmute your microphones now. They are taking your greetings so that we wrap up. I'm waiting for you. Okay, now I unmute. I won't say iPhone, so I unmute. Okay, Mama Bema unmute. Okay, I'm waiting for you. Great to say unmute. Let's unmute our microphones. Take our slogans. When I say Live and Cleave, you respond. Couples for Life, Christ our help. Doc, can you please unmute for us? Japan, Mrs. God bless you, Mrs. Dansu Akins, Obed Bonsu, Samuel Crowd. Can you please unmute on your microphones for us? Okay, I think we have a good quorum. So Live and Cleave. Couples for Life, Christ our help. Live and Cleave. Couples for Life,
Christ our help.
For the last time, Live and Cleave.
Couples for Life,
Christ our help.
I will say this meeting was streaming live on YouTube, and there are recordings there. Please subscribe and be a part of the family. You can be a part of the family when you contact anyone who introduced you here, or they'll be by the right place to be a part of the family. God bless you. Good night. Bye-bye.
Medina dancing, Vonia, Yemameta, Meman in Quanchi, boniting achamasena meshirani ding na medina dansi bonia oh yeah mameda